How close is the US men's national team to returning to the World Cup? What are the scenarios that need to happen for the US to qualify to Qatar? Hi, if you're new here, I'm Filippo and welcome to Tactical TV, and welcome to an episode where we're going to dive in to the multiple scenarios that get the US men's national team to Qatar based on how many points we make. Back in 2017, when CONCACAF happened, there was roughly a 3% chance that the United States would miss on the World Cup, but it happened. Now, for this video, I'm not going to do probability of percentage and that math. One, because it's boring, and two, which is probably the main reason, is I don't know how to do it. What I am going to do is go through almost all possible scenarios and outcomes, so you will know exactly the amount of points our opponents must be held based on the amount of points we get in the window. By the end of this video, you'll either be much more relaxed or your anxiety might skyrocket. So I do apologize for that in advance, but just see it this way. I made this video out of anxiety after doing multiple simulations in my own head, so I just decided to write them down and make a video about it. Towards the end of the video, I will be giving you my main conclusions based on all the scenarios we went through. So if you don't feel like listening to me talk for a couple minutes, you can just go to the end of the video. And at the very end of the video, you'll have everything that you need to know. Before we start the video, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy, and comment down below how many points you think the United States will get this upcoming window. All right, so let's play the intro and let's get started. Okay, so before we go to the scenarios, let's quickly go through who we face next window and the current situation of the table. So who we face Mexico at Mexico for the first round of the 3 games. Then we go to Orlando to play Panama in the United States. And then we go away to face Costa Rica. By the way, we never defeated Mexico or Costa Rica in away matches in World Cup qualifying. So I'm not telling anyone to be pessimistic, but it could happen that we don't win any of those 2 games. But we'll talk about that in the video. In regards to the table, let's go through the main ones, which I'm just going to talk about the United States, Mexico, Panama, and Costa Rica. So the United States and Mexico are tied with 21 points. The top 3 teams qualify directly to the World Cup. The number 4 seed will play an interconfederate playoffs with a team from Oceania, which we don't know who will be yet. Panama has 17 points right now, and Costa Rica has 16. So Panama is 4 points behind the United States, and Costa Rica is 5 points behind the United States. Now, the goal differential is something that you all have to keep in mind. It's going to be very important throughout the video. The United States has a +8 goal differential when it comes to Panama and Costa Rica. So that is massive, and they likely won't catch up. Now, look at Costa Rica. They scored 8 goals in 11 games throughout the entire campaign. That also works against Mexico, as they do have 3 less goals than us in terms of goal differential. Okay, that was all for that. Let's go to the scenarios. Okay, before I start the first scenario, let's just make one thing clear. I'm not going to do a scenario where we're with 0 points or 1 point, because if that happens, we will likely not make it to Qatar. And honestly, if we get 0 points or 1 point in this window, we don't deserve to go to the World Cup. So I'm going to start with the worst case scenario in my personal opinion. So 2 points. That's what we're going to start with. In 2 points, the United States would hit 23 points total. And there is 3 ways where this scenario can go. The worst case scenario. The first way this can happen is we tie Mexico, we lose to Panama, and we tie Costa Rica. This is the less likely scenario and a nightmare scenario. So with that said, Mexico would just need 1 win against Honduras or El Salvador to be ahead of us. So that ship has sailed. We would not get second place under these circumstances. Also, in this case, Panama will have gotten 3 points against us in Orlando, but our goal differential in regards to them is fairly big. Therefore, if they do get the same amount of points as us, we would still be ahead. All we need is for Panama to lose to Honduras or to Canada. Both games are at home for Panama, but if they lose one, they can only reach 23 points max, which means they probably wouldn't surpass us in the goal differential. As for Costa Rica, we draw them in this case. They would only be able to reach a max of 23 points if they win the matches against Canada and El Salvador away. But they are a low volume scoring team. In that case, they would tie with us in 23 points, but they wouldn't catch up to the goal differential. So it's safe to say that if we draw Costa Rica away, they will likely not surpass us. The second way that we can get 2 points in this window is if we lose to Mexico, we tie Panama, and then we tie Costa Rica. So it's much easier to analyze this one after we went through the past one. We lose to Mexico, we're going to stay behind Mexico because we're going to get 2 points and they're going to be 3 points ahead of us, so we won't catch up. Now, if we tie Panama, they would have to win their other 2 games to surpass us, because then they would hit 24 points while we will still have 23. A possible scenario, but low probability. They would need a 7-point window. As for Costa Rica, as I said, if we draw them, they likely will not surpass us if we get a 2-point window, unless they randomly start scoring 3 to 4 goals per game, which I don't think it'll happen considering they scored only 8 goals throughout the entire campaign. Last but not least, we tie Mexico, we tie Panama, and now we lose to Costa Rica. So again, Mexico wins this one and they have 2 games left. If they win one of them, we're behind them. So likely would happen. Now we tie Panama. We talked about this already. They would have to win 2 of their other games to surpass us. Nothing more, nothing less. But what about Costa Rica? Well, it's the same as Panama. Costa Rica would have to break 23 points. Beating us would get them to 19 points. So if they win and draw one of the games, they tie us in points, which, as I said, they won't catch up in the goal differential. It's not likely going to happen. So Costa Rica would need to win the other 2 matches. Even though they're defeating us in the final game, they would need a 9-point window if we got 2 points only in the entire window. The only other team that got a 9-point window throughout World Cup qualifying is Canada. So yeah, pretty much what I'm saying is if we get 2 points, the only way Costa Rica makes it to the World Cup, or surpasses us more specifically, is if they get 9 points. If you believe that can happen, then yeah, it could happen. But I find it unlikely. Okay, now let's go to the next point scenario. And now we're going to talk about if the United States got a 3-point window. But listen, we already did a scenario where there were a few draws where you can get some conclusions. The 3-point window that we're going to do here is only if the United States won 1 game. So we're going to pick each single game that they won and we're going to do simulations based off that. So in this scenario, the United States gets 3 points and hits 24 with 1 win and 2 losses. Considering our past record playing Mexico and World Cup qualifying away in Costa Rica, and our current away record as well, a win in any of those games does not sound likely. But let's do it anyway. There's a first time for everything. The first scenario I want to do is we beat Mexico, we lose to Panama, and then we lose to Costa Rica. The Mexico situation is pretty simple. In this case, if they get 4 points out of 2 games left, they finish ahead of us. Very possible considering they play Honduras and El Salvador. Panama will hit 20 points by defeating us, so they would need a draw and a win to tie us with 24 points. So considering the goal differential is not looking good for them, Panama would need a 9-point window if we defeat Mexico. The same applies to Costa Rica. They are 1 point behind Panama, so if they get 4 points, they won't even tie us in points. So Costa Rica needs to win all other 6 points after defeating us, so they would also need a 9-point window. So just to summarize, if we beat Mexico, Panama and Costa Rica need a 9-point window to surpass us. Whether you think it's possible or not, it's up to you. Okay, now we beat Panama, we lose to Mexico, and we lose to Costa Rica, which this one is a very probable scenario, right? We win the home game and we lose the 2 away games. This one is very likely to happen. I hope not. I hope we get more points, but this one's very possible. For this one, we automatically eliminate Panama. They can't reach us if they lose to us at home. Panama would be out. As for Mexico, they would only need a draw in 2 games to finish ahead of us for this one. So yeah, they would probably finish ahead of us considering the 2 games they have are not that hard. As for Costa Rica, it's the same criteria as before. We got 3 points. The only way they surpass us is getting a 9-point window. So just one thing to make it clear, if we defeat Panama at home, we lock in top 4, which means we'll at least get the Interconfederate playoffs. But we're going to be pretty close to top 3 considering Costa Rica likely will not get a 9-point window. Right, everyone, we have an announcement here. The channel has a sponsor. Tired of having big tech collecting all your data and spy on you? Well, our sponsor might have the solution to that. NordVPN is the world's best VPN service, offering fast connectivity, most servers, and next-generation encryption to make sure that everything you do online stays secure. Plus, you can use NordVPN on all your computer and devices no matter the operating system. With NordVPN's unlimited bandwidth, you never have to worry about a slow connection either. And plans start at under $4 per month. So grab your exclusive NordVPN deal right now by going to nordvpn.com/BLEAV. That is BLEAV as in BLEAV. Use the code for 70% off on your NordVPN plan, plus an additional free month. It's also risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. So again, thank you NordVPN for sponsoring the channel. The last scenario I want to talk about with us getting 3 points is we defeat Costa Rica, we lose to Panama, and we lose to Mexico. Okay, so we talked about this already. It's pretty simple. If Costa Rica loses to us, they are out. Panama would need a 9-point window in this scenario since they would have to hit 24 points. As for Mexico, they would just need a draw against one of the other two opponents to stay ahead of us. Again, as I said, one probable scenario that could happen as well is the US gets 3 points out of just tying everyone, right? We could just tie everyone. I could talk about that scenario. I'm not going to waste time with that. We went through the draws, and at the conclusions at the end of the video, you will know what we need if we draw Panama or Costa Rica. Sorry if that was confusing. I'll summarize it at the end. Okay, the last point scenario that I want to go through is the 4-point scenario. So we get a win, a draw, and a loss. Now for this one, I do not have to go through all the possible outcomes. We already drew many conclusions of how each result against the 3 opponents would impact us this window. For a window with 4 points, these are the main points you must keep in mind. If we beat Panama, they can't reach us anymore. If we draw Costa Rica and win one of the other 2 games to get 4 points, they can no longer catch up to us as well. What I'm trying to say is most 4-point scenarios, we make it to Qatar. However, there is one worth pointing. It's the one where we get 3 points out of the 4 by beating Mexico. Yes, that is the tricky one and we must address. So let's dive into those. Okay, the first one I want to talk about is we defeat Mexico. As I said, all these scenarios are going to be us defeating Mexico. We tie Panama and we lose to Costa Rica. Again, we have 25 points in this scenario. Mexico could stay behind us in this case because they would need to win both games left to surpass us. If they get 4 points, they would tie us in points, and the goal differential right now is not looking promising for them considering the opponents the US faces. If we lose to Costa Rica, we're probably not going to get trashed by them. Now, since we hit 25 points in this scenario, Panama would get 1 point out of our match, which means they would hit 18 points. So let's say they win both of the other games. The max amount of points they can reach is 24. So in this scenario, Panama would not catch up to us no matter what, which locks in a top 4 for us. Now, what about Costa Rica? So in this scenario, Costa Rica gets 3 points out of us, which brings them to 19. Which means they would need to win the other 2 games to tie with us in points. So they would need a 9-point window just to tie in points. Considering the goal differential is 8 right now, they would probably have to beat their opponents 4-0 minimum to surpass us at that criteria, which is not very likely considering they scored 8 goals across the entire campaign so far. So yeah, just to summarize it, this is a scenario where Panama would not reach us. Costa Rica would need a perfect window with a high volume of goals. Very unlikely to happen. So the United States would qualify in this case, beating Mexico, tying Panama, and losing to Costa Rica. Now, the last case that I want to talk about is we beat Mexico, we lose to Panama at home, and then we tie Costa Rica away. It doesn't really sound like a possible outcome. We would win at Mexico, tie Costa Rica, and lose at home, but let's go through this one. Right away, we drew Costa Rica, and as we previously established, they're out. We already established that in the first scenario when we talked about earlier in the video. Now, again, we beat Mexico, and as I said before, they would have to win both games left or catch up on the goal differential by getting 4 points. But what about Panama? We have 25 points here. Panama would be getting 3 points in our matchup, which means they would hit 20 points with 2 games to be played. So from here, it's pretty simple. Panama would need to win all other 2 games to surpass us. They would need a 9-point window to finish 1 point ahead of us, and we would finish 4th. So this scenario, we could drop 4th if Mexico and Panama win both of their games left. Not very likely, but possible. But what I'm trying to say here is most of the cases of the 4-point window, we qualify. All right, everyone, scenario number 4 was going to be a 5-point window. But if we do get a 5-point window, we qualify no matter what. So if we get 5 points, 6 points, 7 points, 9 points, we make it to Qatar. All right, so 5 points were good. Alright everyone, that does it for this video. Now I'm going to go through the conclusions based on everything we did. Hopefully it wasn't boring. Hopefully now you're either more relaxed or more nervous. Comment down below where you are. But let's go through the conclusions, which is what matters, right? What we learned by going through these simulations, and then we'll wrap up the video. So, conclusion number 1, the Mexico game. In terms of qualifying, a loss or a draw is the same thing. We either win or it doesn't matter. Besides the confidence aspect, right, of not losing to Mexico. But in terms of points, the loss and the draw don't have any difference. The second conclusion we have here is if we get 3 points, Costa Rica and Panama would need a 9-point window to surpass us. And Costa Rica would need to score a high volume of goals because they would tie with us in points. The third conclusion is we beat Panama at home, they can't catch up to us anymore. And if we draw Costa Rica away, they can't catch up to us anymore as well. Conclusion number 4 is if we draw in points with Panama or Costa Rica, they are likely going to stay behind us based off the goal differential. Alright everyone, hopefully now you know everything you need to know for this window in terms of what the United States needs to make it to Qatar. Alright, I want to thank you all very much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button before you go. Comment down below what you think, if the United States will qualify or not. Actually, please just say yes. Thank you for watching everyone, and have a great day.